You're listening to Spurscast, episode 663. My name is Paul Garcia, and I am your host here on the Spurscast. Today, I'll be joined by Project Spurs writer Benjamin Bornstein and former Project Spurs writer Trevor Zickgraf. The last time I spoke to Ben and Trevor, the Spurs hadn't selected their picks in the NBA draft. Now, with one summer league game logged, let's see what they think about the Spurs' draftees. All right, guys, welcome. How are y'all doing? Ben, go ahead and start us off. How are you doing?
Fantastic, man. Ready to talk some post-draft.
And Trevor, how are you doing?
Early here on the West Coast, but I'm ready to go. You guys couldn't think of a better way to wake up on a Sunday morning.
There we go. All right, guys. So before we get to the getting y'all's analysis on the Spurs' picks in the draft, and again, I did want to have you guys both on post-draft to get your analysis here. I do want to go over the latest news and notes for the team since I last recorded a Spurscast. Some official signings and moves that have taken place. The Spurs officially waived Danilo Gallinari on Friday. I made a video on Project Spurs where you can go look at that and see, what are the cap implications with Gallinari waived. All three Spurs rookies have signed their contracts. I know Blake Wesley was the first player to sign last week, and then Jeremy Sochan and Malaki Branham both signed on Friday. And then also the Spurs can open up the most cap space in the league depending on certain moves that they make, so they do have the most cap space left. Let's first begin with that question about the cap space. Trevor, we'll start with you. What do you think the Spurs are doing with that cap space? They can open up to I think it's like $35 million if they needed to. What do you think they're doing right now?
Well, I think the most logical space is that they are in total rebuild. Like, we're going to take your bad contracts for a nice draft pick or a couple of okay draft picks or whatever. I think they're just looking for draft equity. I tweeted this, but I feel like maybe like Mike Conley or Gordon Hayward come to mind as far as like maybe they'll just take them. They both have 2 years left on their deal. Maybe they play for half the season before they get dealt. I mean, I feel like they could use Mike Conley. Trey Jones is the only actual point guard on the roster right now. So I don't think having Mike Conley be your nominal starter or just come off the bench and play 20 minutes per game wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And then Gordon Hayward would just kind of be an offensive hub that until he gets hurt, if that were the case. So I don't think it's things that they couldn't use, but I don't think they're trying to win. What I would like them to do, and I'm just going to keep banging this drum, even though I don't think it's realistic. I don't think they're actually doing it now. I still think going after DeAndre Ayton is a worthy option, just because, he's 23 years old. With the exception of maybe just having to trade Jakob Poeltl, just because you don't really need Jakob Poeltl if you have DeAndre Ayton. You're not giving up anything to get him. You know what I mean? You're not you don't have to sacrifice any of the young talent that you have, or at least giving him an offer sheet. And maybe that just forces Phoenix to match and whatever. Then at least you did something. But also, I just think if from a development standpoint, there are worse things to have than a guy who can. You can see if he can be an offensive hub. I mean, we don't know for sure that he can be yet because of the last 2 years. He's just had Chris Paul and Devin Booker. He's just lived in that space. But think about if Josh Primo's coming off of a screen and roll, there's a lot worse things to have than than have DeAndre Ayton setting that screen and then hightail into the basket, or DeAndre Ayton getting double teamed. And guys coming off of curls and getting wide open looks off of ball movement. So, he was the third best player on the finals team and the third best player on a 60-something win team, and the best defender. You could argue he's the best defender on both of those teams. So, those guys don't become available very often. So, I think that's still a viable option. I don't think that's what the Spurs are doing, but I think it's a viable option. And the last thing I'll say is I think they could also be waiting for the, as you get towards the beginning of the season, the rookies who don't extend, who don't get the contract extensions. So basically the space that DeAndre Ayton was in last fall, they are prime to be able to hop onto that if any of those guys actually get moved.
Yeah, Keldon Johnson could be in that situation this coming off season.
Keldon Johnson is in that situation, exactly.
Yeah. So just to clarify there, the Spurs, again, DeAndre Ayton's max is $30.9 million in year one, and the Spurs can definitely open up that kind of cap space. So, that's an option. Ben, I'm going to ask you two questions then. One, what do you think they're doing? And then two, what would you prefer them to do with their cap space?
I'm in agreement with Trevor on this one. I think what they're doing is they're kind of opening themselves up and saying, yeah, we'll take on your really terrible contracts, but you're going to have to give us something in return. You're going to have to give us either some sort of young asset who's cheap or picks or whatever it is. They're going to be the third team or a fourth team in a trade that is going to be way too complicated for me to follow in a series of tweets. But I think they're going to be one of those kind of facilitating trade partners. If not now / before the season, I think certainly near the trade deadline when people have a better idea or when teams have a better idea of, okay, are we competing or not?
Yeah, because Paul, you probably have it in front of you. They have a full roster, right? I mean, like technically.
Yeah, the Spurs, they have 15 players, and they would have to just waive either Trey Jones or Keita Bates-Diop to open up a roster spot.
Yeah.
Which I would imagine it's KBD. Off the top of my head, it's who I'd go with. Just because of, like Trevor mentioned, there's no real true – Trey Jones is the only true point guard on this team right now. So it would not make a lot of sense to get rid of him, and he's cheap enough that it shouldn't matter that you keep him. What I'd like them to at least tender an offer to DeAndre Ayton. Even if you know or you have zero intention of actually signing him or you don't think you have a real shot at him, you have to make the Suns do something.
Yeah.
The Spurs, I just don't think the Spurs can sit back and just let teams do what they want and get comfortable and think that they're going to be able to take advantage of whatever situations they have. I think the Suns are probably thinking, oh, well, no one's going to make an offer on him. He's a restricted free agent, so maybe he'll just take what we give him. But if the Spurs say, no, we'll give him this money. We'll give you this offer. Now the Suns have to make a decision. You're at least making them do something. And it's just, I get not, and I think a lot of people have gotten upset because there's been a lot of rumors or there's been reports that like the Spurs would be a perfect third team in a potential like Nets trade to get rid of Kyrie Irving so he can rejoin LeBron, which makes no sense to me. But everyone's like, oh, they're not going to do it because they despise the Lakers so much. I'm like, okay, and are they not allowed to despise the Lakers? Are they not allowed? Like, why would they help a team they don't like? Granted, in every trade, you should be not trying to help the team you're trading with. You should be trying to win the trade. But, you have to give concessions here and there or else people just straight up won't trade with you. It becomes like my fantasy football season where if I'm having any sort of a decent season, I don't trade anybody and I don't give anybody an opportunity to make an offer because I like my team. Go away.
Also, that's a team they have an asset from. Like they picked up a 2024 second round pick from them. So like if you're basically helping them get rid of Russell Westbrook, like you're improving them in the short term, in theory. And then like I also just think like because the Lakers only have 2 draft picks to trade, and Brooklyn's gonna want one of those picks. So like
yeah.
And Paul, you probably have a better grasp on this than I do, but like Russell, he was like 45 million. Is that
he's like 45, 47. I don't have it at the top of my head. But then the thing is, what San Antonio is, they'd have to include another contract, either somebody like Pirtle or Josh Richardson, someone like, or Doug McDermott, somebody like that, a good player.
And then so you're either putting Westbrook on your roster and having him play, and like that's not a guy that. And look, it's worked out his entire career for him. Like he doesn't. It's not that he doesn't share, but it's like who on the current roster is going to be like, okay, actually, Russell, my turn. Like no one's going to do that. And so like I just feel like you're just developing a bunch of role players if you have Russell Westbrook on your roster, and then if you buy him out, like you're still basically like you're capped out at that point.
Yeah.
Like you can't just be like, yes, we'll take your $25 million player. Give me a good draft pick or give me a good person, a good second, or like you can't do that. So that's why I don't. That's actually why I don't. That contract's too big.
It's way too big.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. It's if they were to trade for Russell Westbrook, again, you're sending out a good player. You're sending out Josh Richardson or Doug McDermott to the Lakers or the Nets, somebody, and then also Westbrook would most likely get bought out. So I know Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report, who's a really good cap person, he said basically for the Spurs would be like a $17 million hit for them on their cap sheet. But I mean, you're still losing all that cap space, right? Either way, like you said, Trevor. So then there goes your ability to trade for other contracts for picks and things like that. So, I mean, I agree with both you guys. I think that's what the route they're taking is they just want to be that third team who gets involved and they're waiting. And again, I think the Pacers are the most likely team to offer DeAndre Ayton the offer sheet. They don't have as much cap space as the Spurs. I think the most they can open up is like 29 million if they trade some players. But again, the Spurs could definitely, send Ayton.
By the way, a Miles Turner sign and trade, like because Ayton's got that base year compensation, so it's like the trade value is basically like half of what his actual contract is. But Miles Turner for DeAndre Ayton in that case, like that swap almost like money wise almost works perfectly. So I agree, Paul. I think that's Indiana is the most likely Ayton destination. I will add on the Ayton thing real quick because I got in a lot of I've been banging the Ayton drum on Twitter like nobody's business, but basically it's like, okay, well, you're taking yourself out of the first or second pick in the draft. And it's like, okay. I think DeAndre Ayton's a very good basketball player. I just made the case for him. I think like given the fact that this team only has like one point guard and it's a team that really needs to, there's like guys need to develop everywhere. Like it's not like, I don't think DeAndre Ayton takes you from a 20-win team to a 35-win team. Like you're still going to be bottom half or whatever, top of the lottery. Like I still think like maybe you're not the worst team in the league. Maybe you're the 5th or 6th worst team in the league. Yeah. But like, I still think with the way the lottery odds have flattened out, like you're still going to have a shot at a good pick. And like, what if you're still one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the league and you still drop down to like the 5th pick in the league or 5th pick in the draft? We've seen that happen plenty of times. So Ben, you and I both follow the draft pretty hardcore. Scoot Henderson is awesome. Victor Wembanyama is awesome, but you're like looking at like a 15% chance of getting those guys.
Yeah. And frankly, even if you don't end up with a top 2 pick in next year's draft, there's a ton of dudes that are great consolation prizes.
Yeah. And like in theory, like if you're signing DeAndre Ayton to a max contract, you're saying that you think DeAndre Ayton has room to improve. You think he has room to, especially offensively, to be a primary option. So, like, you're not even guaranteed that the guy that you're drafting at, let's say 3 or 4, or even 1 and 2. I mean, I think Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson are going to be very good players, but there's no guarantees that those guys are going to be are going to even hit DeAndre Ayton's level. But projecting forward with what he could be. So that's just I get a lot of pushback. Well, you're ruining the tank, and it's like, I mean,
yeah,
like, I understand not wanting to go after the 28-year-old veteran who's made like 1 All-Star team and might not ever make another All-Star team again. A 23-year-old guy, like just coming off his first rookie deal, like that's a totally different thing. And you still have the Richardson contract, the McDermott contract, and Pirtle's probably gone anyways.
Yeah,
like you still have that flexibility to make other moves.
Yeah, and I think that's why this year tanking is a little bit different. I mean, being in this era of tanking is a little bit different because I mean we just look at Houston, right? They had the worst record in the league. They bottomed out, and then they still got the number 3 pick in the draft. They couldn't get So again, there's no guarantee that anymore that tanking is. It's not like the era when Tim Duncan was getting drafted. So.
Oklahoma City was trying really hard to be the worst team in the league last year.
I mean, you want to talk about the Tim Duncan era of that. I mean, I'm pretty sure the year the Spurs got the number 1 pick, it was actually supposed to be Boston. I think Boston had a worse record.
The Spurs had like the 3rd or 4th best lottery odds or worst lottery odds, however we're looking at it. They were projected to have like the 3rd or 4th pick.
Oh. Yeah, so I mean, again, I can see both y'all's arguments. Whether you give the offer sheet to DeAndre Ayton, or you just try to bottom out. And again, there's no guarantee that if you're the worst team in the league, you're going to get that number 1 pick. All right, so let's continue on. Some other deals that haven't been made official. So we're still waiting on Gorgui Dieng to sign his deal. I am interested in seeing if he signed for the veteran minimum or if he got a little bit more of their cap space. Dominic Barlow is interesting because he is supposed to sign a 2-way deal. They haven't signed him yet to that 2-way deal. And so I do wonder, because he had a pretty impressive summer league play in his first game. We'll talk about him a little bit later. But I do wonder, do y'all think there's any chance that the Spurs, instead of giving him a 2-way, they just give him a regular NBA deal because they can sign him to like a 2 or 4 year deal? Ben, go first there. What do you think about Barlow maybe getting a full roster spot?
That's tough. I'm inclined to say that they don't initially give him a 2 to 4 year deal just because they're going out and they're signing Gorgui Dieng.
Mm-hmm.
But intention is to move Jakob Pertl at some point, and it would probably depend on who they get back in that trade. If they don't get back another big in the trade, then I would say Barlow's probability of getting signed to an outright deal, not two-way, is much higher. But right now, I mean, I think the Spurs probably just want to see what they have in him with the summer league, and they want to see what exactly he can do. This was a guy who was probably going to be a lot of people said he was going to be a second round pick. He ends up going undrafted. The Spurs grab him. It's I think it's a nice grab personally, but he's only played one summer league game. I think it may come down to what he does in the rest of these summer league games and how much run they give him and what he can show them, because I think the biggest swing skill for him is going to be shooting, like it is for a lot of guys, but especially as, potentially 6'9", 6'10" guy who can move really well. If he can space the floor for teams, they're going to really value him a lot more than just being, a gazelle running athlete up and down the court.
Trevor, what do you think about that, about them instead of going with two-way route, just straight up giving Barlow a deal already?
I think initially they probably just still two-way him because you can always convert. Convert. I don't know the specific rules, but you can always convert the contract into the season if they decide he needs more minutes. But I actually, so a buddy of mine works for Overtime Elite, and so I just asked him. I said, "Hey, like after the report came out that they signed him, I said, hey, tell me like what's the deal with this guy? Because I'd seen that they liked him. I knew he was a big, but I didn't like." Second round guys, it's so hard to like. It's just so hard to figure out like who I should actually be paying attention to. But he told me, obviously great frame and everything. But he told me ultimate team guy and worker, great competitor, good feel for the game. His three's developing. He's already a really good defender. Ben, did you know this? He was only a 3-star recruit when he committed to Overtime Elite.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was not heavily recruited by.
And so my friend thinks that part of the reason that he went undrafted was because he just didn't have this cachet going in.
He wasn't a sexy name. Yeah.
Yes. But he said, and just obviously, like I think there's there's still like a little bit of skepticism with Overtime Elite. But he said the only thing he said that like really jumped out to me was that. Of the guys Overtime League had this year, he committed himself to the program as much as anyone and just like lived in the gym. And so, I actually think if it is just a two-way, which I think it will be, Austin's going to be the perfect place for that guy to grow. Like that's what a perfect next step for him to just, he's in this Overtime Elite program with a bunch of other guys his age. And he's going to primarily spend most of his time in Austin, where he's going to get to explore the space a little bit more, but also like he's not like, it's that you're not going from high school to just getting thrown into the fire of the NBA. And so I think as far as two-way signings go, like that's just like ideally what you want your two-way to be, because he still gets to spend time with the big club and absorb all that.
What is the rule on that, Paul? By the way, is it 50 days on the roster and then you?
Yeah, it's like I think they just went to specific games now, so I think it's like 50 games is your max. And they did this last year with Joe Wieskamp. They had him on a two-way to start the year, and then and Devontae Kaycock, and then they converted both players to him full. Yeah, so I think that's probably the safest route that they go. I do think it's interesting that they haven't signed him quite yet to that actual two-way. Yeah. All right, so before we move on to our next topic, guys, let's listen to a quick word from our sponsors. The action never ends at DraftKings Sportsbook, especially this summer. With tons of ways to bet on all your favorite sports, you can fuel your fandom and feel the heat of the season like never before. Plus, right now, DraftKings Sportsbook is giving new customers a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's right, make your first bet up to $1,000, and if it doesn't win, you'll get another shot to cash in. You can throw down on all the major action of baseball, golf, MMA, and more. Plus, with same-game parlays, spreads, money lines, over-unders, and props, your betting options feel endless. Best of all, DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TBPN. Make your first deposit and get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code TBPN. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, so now let's go ahead and break down the draft, how it went, and then just get y'all's impressions, thoughts of what the Spurs did here. So let's begin with the number 9 pick that they selected. This is Jeremy Sochan. He's actually 6'8" according to their training camp roster. So I know in the draft he was 6'9", but he looked a little bit shorter when he was standing next to Branham and Blake Wesley in person. He unfortunately we can't see him in the summer league because he initially had he had COVID-19. He was in health and safety protocol. He exited the protocols, but the Spurs didn't want to rush him back. They said he hasn't been in conditioning, things like that. And then even it broke the other day during the game that he actually has some hamstring issues from before the draft or something like that. So again, Sochan will not play, so we won't actually get to see him out on the court until the season actually starts, or in training camp at least. So Ben, let's start with you. What were your thoughts of them drafting Sochan at number 9?
I love that pick at number 9. That was probably one of my top 3 guys that I wanted them to get. Dyson Daniels, of course, was one of the other ones. They just missed out on him. He got picked. I think it was the pick before. Mm-hmm. So I was a little upset that Dyson Daniels came off the board. I was super ecstatic, though, that Shadon Sharp was off the board because that decision was then out of their hands. I know we had that discussion last time. Jalen Duren was a guy I liked for them, but ultimately I think Sochan was the right choice. It's just you need someone like that. The Spurs just need that guy, whether he's 6'8" or 6'9", whatever. He can probably still play small ball 5. Mm-hmm. He can play some point forward from you. My favorite comparison for him has been like a much more athletic Boris Diaw. And the hope is that he develops a 3-point shot to be consistent, and he can actually space the floor for you rather than just being potentially just a straight point forward who's handling the ball and trying to make plays for others. I'd like to see how his shot develops. I think, again, that's, as I've said for other people, that is going to be a major swing skill for him.
Okay. Trevor, what were your thoughts on them taking Sochan at 9?
I mean, I didn't love it. I remain skeptical about his offensive upside, but he is a 6'8" defensive first wing / big forward, whatever we're calling this. He's a 6'8" forward who can play defense and can switch positions. So that alone makes it a worthy pick, I think. There was Ben mentioned a couple of the names. There were other guys I liked in that range a little bit more, specifically Jalen Duren. But I totally get the pick. Like I didn't even like my initial response on draft night, like when I was just watching it. By the way, guys, I was very proud of myself. I put my phone down after the Pelicans picked Dyson Daniels. I put my phone down, like screen down.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And went and washed a couple dishes, or I just did something. And I was like, I just want to be surprised. Everyone else, I was on Twitter the rest of the draft.
Fantastic.
Especially because Sochan was there, Duren was there. I don't remember who else was there that I liked for them. And so I was like, I just want to be surprised. So I did it, and it was torturous. But anyways, no, I think Ben said all the things. He's a versatile skill set. He's right. The shot's going to be the swing skill, but at the very least, he's going to be able to play defense. He's going to be able to move the ball. You can put him in the dunker spot, especially if you have, I actually think signing Gorgui Dieng and having Zach Collins as your backup 5s right now is perfect because they can space. And so the one thing, I don't think he should start because he's probably just going to be forced to sit in the corner and jack up threes and just not really be able to do everything else that we know that, or that we think that he can be able to do. So to bring it back around to the Gorgui Dieng thing, I think that's a good. Gorgui Dieng helps Jeremy Sochan develop into an NBA player. Is my take.
Yeah, and Gorgie's one of those guys who has started, early on he wasn't like a floor spacer. Now he's actually added that to his game, and he, like I said, 61% of his 61% of his shots came from 3. My 2 things are one, it's going to be, I think Pop's really going to like him. The fact that this dude is all defense first, the fact that he can switch positions, that's his calling card. That's going to be something where Again, I don't think he'll start, but I think he's going to get a good amount of minutes just because Pop's going to want to play the players who play defense first. And then number 2 is I do wonder if they're already looking at letting him have the ball in his hands and running like some pick and rolls and things like that. Because I don't know if it was Josh Primo. I think it was Primo, one of his training camp or summer league practices. He mentioned how Jeremy's going to be a player who also runs the offense with them. So I do wonder, with this style of like letting different players attack the defense, I wonder if he's going to get to be a primary ball handler at different times in the offense. All right, let's move on to the second pick that they had. This is Malaki Branham. He was drafted 20th. He's a 6'5" guard. So he did play in his first summer league game against Cleveland on Friday. He finishes with 15 points on 15 shot attempts. He had a better shooting second half. So in the first half, he did miss a lot of his shots. He went 2 of 6 from 3. He had 3 rebounds and just 2 fouls in 28 minutes. The Spurs had him in this game, played at 3. I know he's he's only 6'5". Just my initial thoughts, just because again, you guys have watched him in college. I didn't watch him in college, but just seeing him in the summer league game is oh my, those Chris Middleton comparisons are right on cue. Like he doesn't drive hard to the rim. Instead, he kind of backs you down to the post, like, and tries to get that like mid range. That from what people say, the 3-level scoring, he has that. And so I was really impressed by him. He's very calm. He doesn't like play with a lot of just zipping through and trying to rush at the defense. Trevor, go start with you. What was your thoughts on the Branham pick?
So Branham, I'll be honest, Branham and Blake Wesley were like guys that I was obviously aware of, but I didn't put a ton of I didn't invest a bunch of time into, because Branham especially was like, I don't know, like I felt like the entire time once he shot up the boards, he was like projected to go like 15th, like 14th, 15th. And so like I was like, I'm not going to worry about this. Like he's not going 9. He's a guard. I'm anti-guard with that 9th pick. So, but I didn't even think about it for the 20th. But then, so once they made the pick, I went back and, did a little research. And then that first summer league game, you're right, Paul, like just like the Chris Middleton comparisons, like I just loved it. I love the pick. I loved it because he gives them, he could score from any, like really it feels like he could score from anywhere on the floor. I think that first summer league game, we didn't see him really finishing around the basket too much.
Yeah, he did.
But really tough shot maker from like the mid post, from like the elbow. Just really, it's still curious to see what he is on defense, but he's pretty big, sturdy dude for 6'5", and so I'm super excited about him. The more that I was able to go back and watch a little bit of tape, and then what we saw in that first summer league game, I just felt like he always knew where he was supposed to be on the floor, which is also a thing that a lot of 19-year-olds don't know initially. We'll talk about Blake Wesley in a second, but Ben, you probably watched. I think because he was a bit of a late bloomer at Ohio State too. So
yeah, he came on much stronger in the second half of the season. I think part of it was he got a lot more comfortable in their offense and realized somebody has to step up and give EJ Liddell some help. The man can't carry this entire team by himself. And so Branham decided he was going to be the second fiddle, which worked out well. They played much better in the second half of the season. After I think it was a rough start to their Big Ten schedule, they kind of brought it back and were a decent team. But yeah, he's like you said, he makes tough shots. He's not afraid. He's mentally he's prepared to play the NBA game. He's not, like you said, he knows where he's supposed to be. He's not making stupid mistakes. For the most part, the biggest concern was his shot just wasn't falling. And that's something that will come with reps at the NBA level. So I'm not terribly worried about it. I think the only thing that was concerning was that the Spurs picked another guard after him, who is like Blake Wesley is a slightly different guard. I will give you that, but they already have so many tweener guys on this roster. I just thought they could have had Nikola Jovic at 25, but we're not discussing the Blake Wesley pick yet. But there were some names on the board. The Dyson Daniels pick being right before the Spurs annoyed me a little bit. The one that actually sent me over the edge was the fact that I think it was the Grizzlies at 19. They grabbed Jake LaRavia. I was livid. That was like way more than I should be about a guy who got picked 19th. I understand that, like irrational anger.
What's funny about that, Ben, is so it was like the picks right before them were like Tari Eason, Dalen Terry, Jake LaRavia. I'm pretty sure in that order. And I said out loud, I said, damn it, every time it happened, because it was like those were like three dudes, especially Terry and Eason.
Yeah.
That I was like perfect picks at 20. And you know what? They may have still picked Branham, because at least the way Brian Wright told at the press conference, Paul, I think you were there. He said that they had all three guys in their top 20, right?
Yeah,
yes, he said,
They were top 20 on their big.
But I was totally with you on that bet. Like for the three picks right before that, it like Tari Eason. I don't know if you guys have watched any Summer League Tari Eason yet. We've gotten the full Tari Eason experience. He's a bull in the China shop.
Yeah,
but he's absolutely also wreaking havoc on defense. But and Dalen Terry looked good in his first game. But I was totally like, oh
yeah. I was so upset because I had Jake LaRavia pegged as a Spur since it had to have been like late May. Or maybe even a little earlier. I was like, Jake LaRavia is a Spurs guy. I will fight this. I will die on this hill till the end of time.
Ben, can I ask you this? How come? Is it because he was a guard, Branham? Because I remember, when your scouting process, you didn't put him as a player that you wrote about, or was it just that his name just didn't come up? Because the reason why we put him on our big board is because I saw like a mock draft had him. But was there something about Branham that concerned you, or no?
No, it was just I didn't get a chance to write him up because
okay. So
like Trevor mentioned, I mean, he was a guy who had been jumping up boards, and I assumed he was going somewhere in the early teens.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So so you're saying he did? I think he did fall, because I think even on our big board we had him going, I think like 15th or 17th, something like that. So
I'm trying to remember.
That makes sense.
I think I felt like Cleveland at 14 was just like.
Yeah,
I was like, they don't have any guards. They're probably like, I don't know what they're doing with Colin Sexton. Like that just seems he's
still don't know what they're doing with Sexton.
He's an Ohio kid. Like there's like Branham's like I was like that would be such a perfect Cavs pick. And then it went with Agbaji, which was also a good pick. But Ben, I'm going to read you so Malaki Branham's overall stats. Actually, hang on, let me pull that up so we can just go regular stats versus conference stats. So he was. For the season, he was 13.3 points per game, 49% from the field, and I think I saw 41% on threes. For some reason, Fox Sports' college stats think 3-point percentage doesn't matter.
41.6. I got you.
Yeah. So, but I just pulled up his conference stuff, which is a PDF from OhioStateBuckeyes.com. But it's a legit PDF.
Okay.
It's a legit PDF. Don't worry, guys. So in his 20 conference games, he shot 52% from the field, right just a tick below 47% from three.
Yeah.
And everything else is pretty much, and then 16.3 points per game. So a big jump in both production and efficiency in the 20 conference games, which if you're just looking at conference games, like in the college basketball season, the conference games
those are
the bulk of your season.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Ben, you're actually go ahead.
He also averaged about 2.5 more points per game in conference than the regular season.
Yeah.
Yes. And Ben had a good point here. Earlier, Branham was definitely not in their range. He was supposed to go earlier. So I was just looking back at our mock board, and he was supposed to go 17th, and I saw him going as early as 12. So like definitely in that like 12 to 18 range was his range. So I think in a way he did fall to them. So you're right. They even mock drafts had him as a top 20 player there, and
yeah. So it was a value pick for the Spurs. Totally understand.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys think about it, Chicago maybe looking for some bench scoring would have been another good spot for him. But if you think about it, like. Easton was kind of all over the place, but like Dalen Terry and Jake LaRavia were projected in the 20s.
Yes, for sure.
The bulk of the 20s and the highest for the bulk of the draft season. And then so you could say that their jump actually probably pushed Branham down a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so now let's go to the next player that they drafted. And this is at the 25th pick. They drafted Blake Wesley, 6'5" combo guard. So in his opening summer league game, he finishes. He was the leading scorer along with Josh Primo with 20 points on 16 shots. He was not shy as a rookie of taking shots. He was a leading shot taker in this game. He goes 3 of 4 from 3-point range, 3 of 4 from the free throw line. He had 5 assists, 2 rebounds, 3 turnovers, mainly in the second half with full court pressure applied to him is when he turned the ball over. 2 fouls in 31 minutes, so he actually played a lot of minutes too. What was interesting about this one is the Spurs basically made him like their point guard alongside Josh Primo. So he ran a lot more of the offense than Primo, I would say, in this game. And then if he wasn't the point guard, running point, they had him. Primo was in charge, and then he was like the 2. And so one thing I noticed is just like his speed, having that NBA floor spacing, that type of setup is just, I do wonder how much more now going into future drafts, we should evaluate that for like players who are very quick and can really there was just one play that sticks out to me where, he takes off along the 3-point arc and there's 2 defenders trailing him and he still gets by them just because he has so much space to work with, maybe compared to the college game. So Trevor, let's start with you. What was your thoughts on Blake Wesley? Being picked at 25.
I didn't love the pick, just again because I thought Jovic was there, EJ Liddell, like just bigs were there that I was like that I thought could help. But learning that again, this was a guy that was in the Spurs top 20 on their board. Like you just got to do it and figure it out later. Like especially like, and then also once we found out about the DeJounte trade, I was like, oh well, they're not even going to try to compete this year. Like I thought maybe. Yeah, they held on to DeJounte. They would just do the Spurs thing where they would, whether it was Ayton or a sign and trade for somebody else or just whatever. That John Collins maybe they would go get John Collins. Like they would basically just be like, we want to compete. We want to be. We think if we stay healthy and guys develop, we can be like a 6th or 7th seeder. Like whatever. So when the pick happened, I was like, okay, whatever. Like it's the 25th pick in the draft. Like you just go with the up. Like that's a total upside swing and whatever. And then, but you're right, Paul. Like he was not shy that first summer league game. I think he said after the game that he was kind of had the mentality that he was playing point guard, and so his goal was to set dudes up first and get his own second, which I did not see. I thought it was the inverse.
It was the other. It was the inverse. Yeah,
it was funny. I was about 15 minutes behind the live broadcast, and so. I don't know, like the first 3 or 4 plays down the floor, like he was just
yes.
He was
and they took he got a
mode.
very early subbing, and they had to talk with him. And he fixed it.
So I tweeted, Blake Wesley thinks Blake Wesley is a bucket.
Right, yeah.
So I was like, oh my god, this guy, like he's gunning for a rotation spot immediately, and then he calmed down, and he had a great game. Again, I did not see. Him being primary facilitator first. That was actually more Primo. I think the first 3 quarters, Primo was way more like, and it almost felt like the summer league version of like DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. That's what Blake Wesley and Josh Primo felt like. We're like Wesley was trying to get to the basket, and that it seemed like that was his goal. I don't love his jumper. I think his jumper needs some work, but. Whatever, he's 19 and he was the 25th pick, so you figure that out. But yeah, his ability to get to the rim and use the angles around the rim was really impressive. And so I still think he's probably a guy who, just because of the depth that the Spurs have on the wings, he's probably Austin bound for at least the first half of the season. But really impressive. That was another guy I didn't, I looked at, but I was like. Again, I thought well, if he's there at 20, like 20 feels like a reach, and he's probably gone by 25. And I kept seeing that like some guys thought he might go like late teens, which I felt like would have been a reach. Yeah. I still think it probably still would have been a reach, but I don't know. Yeah, Ben. Again, I defer to you on Blake Wesley.
He was tough. That was a tough watch at Notre Dame. He did not have good spacing at Notre Dame. He felt like he had to be the guy at Notre Dame a lot of times. There just wasn't a lot of help. They weren't a very good team this year.
He shot 30%. He was 40% from the field and 30% from 3, and even 65% from free throw line. I think that was I remember when I first started evaluating, I wrote him off pretty quick because of those. It's just all of those shooting numbers. I was just like, oh my god, what are we doing?
Right. The problem is he shot like garbage, but it also has to be taken into account what was his usage percentage. That I'd want to look up because I bet it was super high. Because Notre Dame just didn't have other offense.
Yeah,
they were that bad. That not to say that I liked the pick. Initially, I didn't care for the pick just because you had just taken the Spurs had just taken a guard who is actually listed bigger at 20.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in the draft, you still had Jovic, and you could have, if you really wanted to, you could have taken your flyer on Patrick Baldwin Jr. there.
Mm.
And like, if you wanted a true project and said, screw it, he's 6'9", he should be able to shoot the ball really well. Let's see what we can do. And you just spend a year or two developing that, I would have been totally cool with that. I think that would have sent a very clear message that, okay, we see him. Let's see if we can develop him, and he'll be legit in 2 years, whatever it is. But, I mean, there were some guys who went in the second round that I thought could have been solid. Like, you could have had – and these two guys went back-to-back – but you could have had Christian Koloko and you could have had Jalen Williams, both of whom I would have been cool with. I know people have concerns with Koloko about his age and inability to space the floor, but I mean, you would have grabbed another big that you can develop. And you know, with Koloko, there were signs that he was spacing out, or that his shot was going to be able to space out the floor.
31% usage, by the way,
for Blake Wesley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I would have guessed 30 or above.
That's his freshman year, not his first summer league game, though. I would assume probably around this game.
Yeah, it's all about the same. Yeah, and actually, I think that's higher than DeJounte's was, because I think he was like at 29% this past season.
Jeez.
Yeah.
But I thought for the Spurs, they could have grabbed a big and solidified the front court there, but alas, not the case. And then they went and sold the 38th pick.
And again, we didn't know. Again, I guess we still don't know that they're going full rebuild, but we can assume that that's the trajectory of this team, is they're going full rebuild. So, yeah, if you're like, I'm with Ben. Like, Koloko would have been another guy. There was probably 10 guys at 25 where I would have preferred, but understanding the logic and understanding that this was like, it's just like any draft where, like, if we didn't see Wesley as higher, but like, let's just say, like, I don't know, pick a name. Tari Eason is dropping to 25. Like, you probably just have to grab him and figure. Even if you already drafted Jeremy Sochan, you probably just got to grab Tari Eason and just figure it out later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And Wesley doesn't look like an overpick because, again, according to our draft board, he was going to go 21. And like you all said, some mocks had him going 16, as early as 16 on their boards.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So if he's there, the Spurs took him. So I guess, Ben, since you saw more of him, you said at Notre Dame, how much of that is going to be an issue for him of, like, knowing that he had to do so much in college and had to be the guy and had, kind of like controlling that aggression in terms of his attack style? Like, when does he know when to kind of put the brakes and maybe not go 100% all the time, or, get more people involved? What do you think it's going to take?
It's so different from player to player, because there are guys who they do that in college for 2 or 3 years and they are tired. They're like, oh my God, I have real teammates now. Please do stuff. Take it out of my hands. I don't necessarily know which way Blake Wesley leans on that. If he's a guy who's going to be able to say and realize, okay, I don't have to do as much work here. I have like NBA caliber teammates who are able to shoot and do, they have real NBA skills. I'm not playing with, the guys I was playing with at Notre Dame. Granted, those are Power 5 guys, but there is a vast difference in talent and skills there.
Was interesting, Ben. I felt like again, we're obviously just going off of one summer league game so far.
That's why I don't want to
later this afternoon on Sunday. But Branham, I almost felt like he was basically like, I'm not the best player on this team. But I'm one of the best players, so I'm just going to keep doing what I did. Like, pretty similar to his role at Ohio State. And I think Mitch Johnson said afterwards, like, he really loved what he did, like where he was getting to his spots and everything. And so it was just interesting watching the difference in the two, because Malaki Branham could have also very easily just been like, I'm going to get mine. And, probably two different directives. And I think, like, back to Wesley, like the point guard conversation, like, I don't think he would have said that unless the Spurs were like, hey, we're going to put the ball in your hands and we're going to see what you're going to do. I don't think he would have just gone out there willy nilly and been like, I was the point guard out there. Like, I think he told him that. I think especially once Sochan went down, and that's just a guy that this is a long time ago, guys, but maybe my first summer league was the year that Kawhi Leonard was there.
Wow.
And they put the ball in his hands a lot.
Yes,
and this was like second year Kawhi Leonard. Like he was not ready to be a primary ball handler. But you could see him sowing the seeds there, like just being like, it's summer league. It doesn't matter, even though they're getting rings. I don't know if you guys saw that. They're handing out summer league rings.
Fantastic.
But
Chris Paul about to come back and play summer league.
But anyway, so they've been doing this, and I thought, that was the one thing I wish we would have. The one reason I wish Sochan was there is
for sure.
To see like what point Sochan would have looked like, because we would have gotten it. We would have gotten at least a little bit of it. But I think with like once Sochan was ruled out, they were like, all right, here you go, Blake Wesley, like be the point guard. You and Primo get to share the point guard responsibilities. And
then the last player we did cover already, so only if y'all have any lasting thoughts about him. And again, this was Dominic Barlow. So again, he didn't get drafted; he was undrafted, 6'10" forward. Out of the what was the place that he came from? The
Overtime
league. There you go. Overtime league. There we go. Okay, so in his game, his opening summer league game, he scores 9 points on 5 shots. We know that he's not known for his offensive skill set. Goes 3 or 4 from the free throw line, 7 rebounds, 1 steal, 6 fouls in 21 minutes. What's interesting, the Spurs did start him at the 5. He started alongside Robert Woodard II. So, were there any closing thoughts regarding Barlow that you all wanted to get off, that you all wanted to share? Ben, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, if he's, all that stuff Trevor said about him earlier is fantastic to hear, especially from a guy who is, in the program, sees him every day. That's great news. You want a guy who's going to work his butt off and be a part of what you're trying to do. So I think that bodes well for him to start. I think if he goes to Austin and he improves the consistency on his 3-point stroke, he's going to have a place in San Antonio. I don't doubt that for a second. He'll make a Gorgui Dieng, or he'll make a Zach Collins essentially expendable, and he'll be much cheaper. So I'm sure the Spurs would love that, and then they can trade or buy out, whatever they're going to do, preferably trade one of those guys out and get something else in returon.
Yeah,
Gorgui Dieng and Zach Collins are actually great. Not role models, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Mentors, maybe? Like
mentors. Yeah, that's a good one. Just because they are guys who, Gorgui especially, as you mentioned earlier, Paul has improved his jumper as his career's gone on, especially out to 3. But like defense has always been his calling card. Like Zach Collins, a little bit. Like I think Zach Collins has got a little bit more versatility to his game, but still, like just the idea that like here's these guys that can space, like basically be a 3-and-D big and start with that, and then just kind of keep working on stuff. But I think the thing I thought he looked fine. I think these defensive first guys always struggle in summer league because there is less structure, and one of the reasons I'm actually glad Sochan didn't play, because I feel like there's a decent chance that like he wouldn't have done a whole lot on offense, and we would have been like, oh no, was this a bad pick? Especially like seeing like Jalen Duren dunk on guys nonstop, because it's just a bunch of fast breaks and pick and rolls. But it's hard to like evaluate guys who's calling cards for defense right now. But I thought he looked fine, and again, like if he can become a 3-and-D big, and I mean he can probably be more, but if he can just even be that, then I think Ben's right. He's going to have a place in the league. And if you're drafting, they didn't even draft him. If you're bringing guys in on 2-way contracts, you're not like, I don't think the main goal there is to unearth the next star. It's to find rotation guys it's another avenue to find rotation guys. And, that's a good short-term goal for him.
Yeah, especially when you inevitably have injuries throughout the season, guys get traded, whatever's going on. That's a guy, he knows your system. You can trust him. You're going to, you're kind of throwing him a bone saying, all right, let's see how you do against NBA competition.
Yeah. I think if he develops, if he has a good progression in Austin, I bet we see a ton of him in the second half of the season. Just given, again, assuming the Spurs are in full rebuild mode, I bet he gets. This is like the best time they have a 2-way contract with the Spurs, because he's gonna be in San Antonio a lot by the end of the year.
No, for sure. I agree with both y'all there. So, before we close out this episode, don't forget to visit projectspurs.com, Spurscast listeners. Any offseason news, we're making sure to report that over on the site. So thanks again to Ben and Trevor for joining me here on this episode of the Spurscast. And thanks also to Joe Garcia for mixing and producing this episode. From all of us at Project Spurs, stay safe and have a great day.